Hello everyone. In my presentation today, I'll be speaking on the refugee policy that is being pursued in Modi's India, where the Hindu nationalist government has been relentlessly weaponizing the concept of citizenship to target refugees and Muslim minorities in India. I would like to start by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands I'm standing on right now. The image on this slide shows a plot of land donated by an NGO for Rohingya refugees in the Indian capital. There are presently around 17,000 Rohingya refugees staying in various camps in India, who have been targeted as part of the state policy by the Hindu nationalist government since 2017, when it was openly declared that, quote unquote, illegal foreign nationals, including Rohingyas, are to be deported. Since then, many refugee camps have been set on fire, hate speech is given against their inhabitants. In October 2018, the Modi government stopped the Rohingyas from obtaining Aadhaar, a biometric card mandatory for availing basic services in banking, healthcare, ration, jobs, etc. The aim being to make their stay in the country as unpleasant and difficult as possible. In March last year, 170 Rohingyas, including women and children, were forcefully sent to a jail in Kathua. Parents were separated from children who were left without food. The UNHCR seems helpless when states themselves flout international laws to make refugee laws that suit their agenda. The Indian government passed the controversial citizenship laws with the aim of not only stopping Muslim refugees from obtaining Indian citizenship, but also to render a vast section of the Indian Muslims stateless. That is, it has the potential to turn Muslim citizens into refugees in their own country. The story of India's handling of incoming refugees from outside its borders is unique as it is deeply rooted in hatred towards Muslims, while at the same time giving the impression that India is ready to welcome asylum seekers from other faiths because, as part of their anti Muslim agenda, the Hindu nationalist government wants to portray that it is always the Muslims who are the aggressors and not the other way around. Muslim refugees are regularly demonized and made to be perceived as threats to national security. But first, a little background into how this hatred became institutionalized. In 1947, India was partitioned into two separate nations of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and a secular India. The partition lines were drawn separating the Muslim majority provinces on both sides of the subcontinent, and hence the newly created Islamic nation of Pakistan had two wings, the East and the West. Uncertainty of the future led to the greatest migration in human history. Muslim families moved towards East and West Pakistan, while Hindus and Sikhs towards India in search of a safer haven. It is estimated that more than 12 million people crossed the borders from both sides, being torn apart from their roots and their birthplaces. The ensuing violence resulted in the death of about 1 million people. Since then, there have been two more mass migrations of inhabitants towards India in 1965 and after that during the independence movement in East Pakistan, which resulted in the creation of Bangladesh in 1971. Apart from them, there have always been illegal immigrants who have been coming to India through the porous borders on both sides of the country. To understand the strategy of the current Narendra Modi government and the Hindu right-wing forces and their scheme of disenfranchising the Muslim minority of the country, one needs to take a note of the chronology of development since 1971. First came the Assam Accord of 1985, a 6-year-long student movement in the eastern Indian state of Assam, which has a border with Bangladesh, resulted in the passage of the Assam Accord, which promised to identify illegal immigrants coming in from Bangladesh. Although Muslims of Bengali origin had been staying in Assam for centuries, they were always persecuted as outsiders by the indigenous Assamese, the people of Assam. The cutoff date was decided. A cutoff date was decided upon to identify who would be marked as illegal immigrant and who a legitimate citizen of the country. This date was the 25th of March 1971. A National Register of Citizens or NRC was supposed to be prepared having the names of all legal citizens of India, which would follow from a National Population Register or NPR, which would be a list of all legal residents of India. The NRC was not implemented by previous governments because of its controversial nature. But when the current right-wing government came to power, it started preparing the citizens register and expanded its applicability to all over India. So the exercise of NRC will now cover not only the residents of Assam, but it will cover the entire country. Although it was meant to target the Muslims, there are many Hindu immigrants as well who cross the border to move into India for better prospects, which means there remains the risk of Hindus being excluded from the citizens register as well. To address this issue, the Modi government enacted the Citizenship Amendment Act in December 2019, providing citizenships to Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, and Christians, virtually people from every faith other than Muslims, coming from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. This means that the Muslims being left stateless after having been excluded from the citizens register will be branded as refugees, and they will have no other option but to go to the detention centers being specifically built for this purpose. As per the UNHRC statute for refugees, the statute of 1950, the primary function of the UNHCR is to seek permanent solutions for the problems of the refugees, and one of the three solutions that are provided is voluntary repatriation of the refugees to their country of origin based on a free and informed decision, which only becomes possible if the conditions in their home countries have improved to such an extent that a dignified return is possible. Conditions in Myanmar have not improved at all for the Rohingya refugee to return. Now, after the passing of the Citizenship Amendment laws, thousands of protesters, Hindus and Muslims alike, came out on the streets in India against this draconian law, which threatens the citizenship of 200 million Indian Muslims. With large cutouts of Gandhi's posters, public parks were filled up with Muslim women demanding repealing of the laws in the true Satyagrahi style of peaceful demonstrations. It all started with Shaheen Bagh, a primarily Muslim majority working class area in South Delhi, where women of all ages started a 24/7 vigil which lasted for close to 3 months. Inspired by the sit-in demonstrations, protests started erupting all over the country with people from all faiths joining hands and marching for their Muslim counterparts. The most important and visible outcome of this was that Muslims again started reclaiming their position in political movements. The Muslim contribution in India's freedom struggle had been substantial, but with the gradual rise of the Hindu right wing, Muslims became almost invisible in the political space. With these anti-CAA protest movements, this community, which constitutes around 15% of India's population, started to find its voice again. The state responded brutally with armed Hindu mobs attacking the unarmed protesters. During the last general elections that took place in May 2019, that was fought by Modi mainly on an anti-refugee, anti-infiltrator narrative. During the election campaign, the present Home Minister of India and the second most powerful personality in the whole country, Amit Shah, had referred to Bangladeshi migrants as termites at a political rally. Termites who simply eat into the country's resources, while the real Indians, the quote-unquote real Indians, get deprived. He promised that each and every one of them would be thrown out if BJP comes to power. He had also added that when BJP formed the government after winning the elections, the party would undertake a nationwide identification of illegal infiltrators living in the country. He said that his government will pick up infiltrators one by one and throw them into the Bay of Bengal, thereby openly threatening refugees with ethnic cleansing. This was red flagged by the US Department in its 2018 annual assessment report of human rights concerns in different countries that was released by the then US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, where it observed that UNHCR and NGOs observed an increase in anti-refugees, specifically anti-Rohingya rhetoric throughout the year in advance of state and 2019 national elections, which reportedly led to an increased sense of insecurity in refugee communities. An opposition politician summed up the political model of the BJP as a business model designed to raise the communal temperature, keeping it at a boil, and to keep India in a permanent religious divide. And to sustain this religious divide, they are using the helplessness of the Rohingya refugees. Last month, during a Hindu festival, mobs of Hindu nationalists took up arms, open swords along with a few firearms as well at certain places, and gathered outside mosques, shouting derogatory slurs towards Muslims, calling them refugees, threatening those praying inside during their holy month of Ramadan with genocide, and blasting obscene songs on loudspeakers. In Delhi's Jahangirpuri, where disturbances broke out after another Hindu procession targeted a mosque in the region, the state's BJP chief called for demolishing the homes of illegal Rohingyas, quote unquote. Although the area, along with its inhabitants, have existed there since the late 1970s. The very next day, the bulldozers obliged gladly, demolishing shops and livelihoods of poor Muslims, and even the front of this mosque, on the right side of this slide, uh, were demolished in order to punish the illegal infiltrators, quote unquote, the illegal infiltrators. After Jahangirpuri, the bulldozers turned towards Shaheen Bagh, the site of last year's citizenship law protests. The Delhi BJP chief Adesh Gupta has claimed that there are more than 500,000 Rohingyas living as illegal immigrants and local citizens should keep an eye on them. 500,000 when the actual number is less than 20,000. He also alleged that opposition political parties were trying to give jobs and other benefits to these Rohingyas while depriving the local population. With his very own refugee policy, where the concept of citizenship is weaponized and used as a tool, much like the bulldozer, to trample the human rights of refugees, the Modi government wants to kill two birds with the same stone. It wants to polarize Hindu voters by dehumanizing Muslim, Rohingya, and Bangladeshi refugees, and at the same time persecuting the Indian Muslim population by asking them to prove that they are not infiltrators. The tragedy of the Rohingya refugees lies in the fact that they are disowned even by their Indian Muslim brethren, who must prove their citizenship so that they are not put in the same detention centers with each other. The Indian Muslim citizen has to prove their own citizenship to say that they are not Rohingyas. There have always been demands from the Hindu right ever since India's independence in 1947 to declare India as a Hindu nation in response to its neighboring country being established as an Islamic republic. But the founding fathers of the country had categorically rejected these demands, stressing on the point that the idea of India was about a sovereign, socialist, and secular democratic republic. The preamble to the Indian Constitution, shown on this slide, beautifully designed with plant and animal motifs, proudly declares the same. And with the passage of the Citizenship Act, that very idea of India is under threat. Thank you.